Welcome back to the Fantasy Tippler. We've been offline for a little while. We've got some good things going on. One of the things that's going to be happening is we're finally getting the website together, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be real basic, but I'm just excited because I had to learn how to build it myself because I was not willing to pay anybody to do it for me, and that's why it's taken a year to put together. Also, new concept going on. I am going to start interviewing regular fantasy football players on this podcast. Would you tell me about your thoughts, opinions of what's going on in the NFL and how was your recent season and what you want to do coming up? And if you are interested in being on the podcast, please hit me up on social media, either on Twitter at Fantasy Tippler or Instagram at The Fantasy Tippler. And we will definitely schedule some time. And I want everyday average players. So really get to know the people. So today we have Jared Hernandez, and it's going to be a great interview. So let's get that started. All right, let's rock and roll. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Tippler. We're here today with Jared. How you doing today, Jared?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I wish I had better lighting for my podcast. So what do you think? The Cowboys going to win today, or are they going to, fall in the place like they always do in the playoffs?
I think they're going to get it done today. I think the final score, I got a final score prediction for you guys. Cowboys 31, Niners 27.
Ooh, so 31-27. I'm almost willing to put money on that. In fact, why don't we do that? You want to do a $20 bet?
Who are you going for in this bet?
I'm going to say, okay, you say it's 31-27. I say it's 49ers. I'm going to put it at, I'm making it a close game. I'm going to put it at 24.
Okay.
21.
Okay, 49ers.
I think Dallas defense will keep it, not a high-scoring game.
Think so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It'll come down to a field goal.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll see.
So I just want to ask you a couple questions. You as an everyday fantasy football player. So first thing is, how long have you been playing fantasy football?
Since 2010.
10. Okay. And currently, how many leagues are you in?
Right now, 2.
2? And what kind of leagues are they? Are they like Dynasty, PPR, redraft?
Yeah, so 2 leagues. First one is PPR league, actually with you. Your league, PPR format. I've been doing that one with you guys for, I think, 2011. So this was was last year the 10th year then? 10th season then. So that's one league. The other league is used to be traditional PPR format with like 12 guys, 10 guys, but we switched because of COVID. We switched to a daily fantasy format, but we did that every week. So not your traditional format like traditional PPR or non-PPR where you do a whole season, but instead did a weekly daily fantasy format where you could have players each team. Well, I won't go into it, but
like that. So like you guys couldn't draft in person, I'm assuming, right. And so you guys switched to a weekly competition. I'm assuming that's kind of based on a similar setup that you got normally during the season. So you could almost draft every week if you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So because we couldn't meet in person, COVID, obviously changed a lot of things. We decided that because we couldn't meet in person and do a typical in-person draft where you have an actual draft board, stickers, plus a lot of fun, right?
Those are always the best ones. It's hard to get everybody, even before COVID, it's hard to get everybody to, come into town because, especially, like you and I, we've been in leagues for over a decade now where, people move, their priorities change, everybody's having babies.
Yeah, exactly. Families start, kind of priorities change. So because of that, it's harder to get everyone together, like you said. Everyone loves fantasy drafts, getting together, hanging out with the boys, having a good time. And, we're just, things change, time changes, families change. And, COVID, that certainly threw a wrench in everybody's plans. So, we decided to do a, online format. Well, not so much online even. It was just here your daily fantasy, team that you could assemble. Every player you're playing against every opponent on a weekly basis. So you're playing literally against, however many entrants there were. I think there was like 13 total entrants. So, more than like your, opponent on a single opponent on a PPR format or non-PPR format. You're playing against literally everybody who could have the same players that you select for that given week. So I could have, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and you could have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb too. And we wouldn't know because obviously we're playing against each other. We're competitive, but literally you could have, similar players on a week by week basis. So different format. I wasn't used to that format, so it took a little getting used to last year. Was the first year we did that.
Did you forget to set the lineup any week?
No, I didn't. But with the lineups, one thing about the lineups is that you have to be on top of it, because a player, I think in that format, if a player gets put on COVID, you have to, at the last second or last minute or the day of, you have to be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
So
that was a big problem for this year with a lot of my draft team. Like I would just be lazy on Sunday or hungover, and wouldn't start really get my brain working until after the game started, and then I see 3 people on my lineup. It's just they got hit with the COVID, and I wasn't paying attention to it. So yeah. So how many weeks did you win this season in that particular daily format?
I won 1 week. I placed top 3 in 3 other weeks.
Oh, not bad. So you got your what's the first place play out? Do y'all do first, second, third, and what are the payouts?
The payouts are 45 for first. Third was 10, and then second was somewhere in between, 10, $45. I didn't place second, but I placed either first or third this year. And actually, I did better the first year for some reason. I don't know why, but in that daily format, sometimes it's, I don't know.
I can explain that. When I'm playing daily formats, I still treat it like my dynasty or my redraft leagues. So there's certain players that I always put in my lineup that I'm just loyal to because because I keep thinking I'm getting a deal. Courtland Sutton, a great example. I played Courtland Sutton way too long.
He's your SMU guy.
He was hot for a second in the beginning of the season, but as soon as Jerry Judy came back, he was freaking worth it. But because he's an SMU guy, and I freaking love him, and I've missed out on some payouts because I keep putting Courtland Sutton in there when I could have been putting Hunter Renfrow, who was fucking awesome, but
he was.
His cost was always very, very low. So well, that's cool. So let's talk about the most fun thing that we do in fantasy football, and that's draft days with the boys, or if you have. I would love to see more co-athletes out there. Get more women involved, but or I just don't come across them. So talk about draft day 21. Draft day regrets for you. Have you really thought about some of the things you've done? Some of the things you kind of wish you spent too high on?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. I actually looked at my not my draft lineup, but what I usually do after every draft that we have, at least in our league, in every in-person draft, I like to take a picture of my draft picks just to see how I started the season and then how I ended, and kind of compare, what moves I made, what mistakes I made. And certainly I looked at the way, I don't know what happened to that picture. I think I deleted it, but the picture I took of this year's draft at the start. So I decided to look at my roster just earlier this morning, doing preparation for this. And man, there's 3 mistakes that I made. The first one, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, I know. We can laugh, right? I thought for some reason that he was going to have a good year despite a inconsistent offensive line. I thought somehow he'd be healthy this year, but that didn't work out. Inconsistent O-line didn't help his cause. Poor play calling, I think. Joe Judge, who ended up getting fired, that did him in, and I just, that was mistake one. The other 2, and that was my first round guy too. So, with your first round picks, either, in my case or in some other cases, a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who I didn't draft, but that guy, he hadn't played a full season since who knows when, maybe his rookie year. Same with Saquon. Like, they're 2 injury prone running backs. So that was one mistake that I made. The second one, 2 other offensive guys that I think I drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th rounds ended up being the running back for Jacksonville, James Robinson. Although he did have some good weeks for the most part.
What round did you draft him in?
Either 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I think it
was. Oh yeah, that's way too high.
And I ended up. Well, see, I have a ranking system, right, based on certain publications rankings, and they ranked him pretty high. Why? They have more insight.
He's a great running back. I just, with all the uncertainty with Urban Meyer, I think at the beginning of the season, and I'm blanking who's the running back that they drafted, Travis Etienne. Yeah,
because he got hurt, and I think he was actually may have been ranked in Robinson's spot, or maybe around there. I forget.
They were kind of back to back.
Yeah,
but they were like,
Travis,
to my mind, they were like 5th round, not like. Yeah. I mean, you took him early.
I did, and that's one of my key mistakes too. Taking him that high, that Clemson running back, I think he would have had a good season or decent season, but the Jags' offensive line is not well touted or highly touted, so ended up not being a great pick. And then the other mistake I noticed was drafting Allen Robinson, also either in the 3rd or 4th round. And that was a stinker. So you're talking 3 picks out of the top 4 rounds that didn't pan out for me. And that was the result of, I think, of the season I had. I ended up barely missing on the playoffs by a slim margin. Mm-hmm. The league was just so competitive this year. You had, almost identical records, except for maybe, the champion, our friend Brooks. He's the one that really stood out on top, really the whole season. I think he held on to first the whole season, but beyond that, everybody from 2nd to maybe 10th place had 5 and 7 records, or like
they were just battling it out.
Yeah, it was you go on a couple 2 or 3 game winning streaks and you could be right in the playoffs again, or 2nd, 3rd place, 4th place. So it's real tough, real competitive, but that's the way our league's always been. It's always been competitive. It's always been hard to win every year. Luckily I can say I won twice, but it's still ultra competitive, and you really have to be on your game every week and be on top of players who are available to pick up on the waiver wire, and you really got to be on top of it. So kudos to Brooks. I don't know if you ever listen to this, but kudos to you, my friend.
Hopefully he'll make a comment below. So I got a funny story about Allen Robinson. In I think it was either 2019 or 2020. I can't remember exactly. But when I was doing my mock draft or my prep, Allen Robinson was consistently available in the 3rd round, and I could never decide whether or not to take him. So I asked a buddy of mine who's he has his own podcast. He's got his own ranking system who I trust. And, he's like, don't take Allen Robinson in the third. He's not worth the third. Maybe if he's available in the fifth, sure. And it was like a record season for, he was like a wide receiver. He was a perfect wide receiver too. He had a couple of like monster games, but he was very consistent. Yeah. And he was the only guy on the offense. So I think it had to be 2019. So I took Allen Robinson in a couple of best ball drafts. I took a lot of best ball drafts, and I took him in a lot of my other leagues in like the fourth round. And I held on to him way too long. I mean, by week 8, I finally decided, I'm like, okay, I have to drop him. Like somebody else suffered, the agony of him and Julio Jones, which, terrible for people. Yeah. So, that was those are pretty. I mean, I don't think they're like regrets. Now, what place were you picking from? Let me ask you that.
I was picking towards the 8th or 9th position. Or no,
that's funny. I didn't realize
7th. I think I was. I'm sorry, 7th position because I ended up the previous year and ended up 5th. I think.
Okay.
I lost in the first round of the playoffs, and so that put me, Isn't
it crazy that Saquon fell all the way to the 7th though? Because some leagues he was going in top 5.
Yeah, I know. And looking back on it, maybe Saquon may have not been a bad pick at the time, but man, he's just injury prone. And again, the offensive line that he has is not the greatest. So looking back on it,
I don't know if I would have taken Saquon in 7. It would have been a tough call.
Yeah.
It depends on who else was there. Like if Jonathan Taylor was still there, I would have taken Jonathan Taylor. Obviously.
Absolutely. Obviously, yeah.
Nick Chubb, I would have taken over Saquon. Like if Saquon was there in the 9th, I probably would have taken him.
And the funny thing too, I was thinking of Chubb too. You kind of had it between them because I think if I remember correctly, a lot of the good running backs went early. Taylor, I think, McCaffrey, Zeke, I think
earlier than I thought he would. I thought
Zeke went pretty high too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just funny. I mean, I even like towards the end of this season when he was healthy and running, and people still wouldn't put him in the daily fantasy lineup. Isn't that crazy? Like I've never seen one guy in one of the leagues he benched Saquon for the championship. Yeah. And I just thought, I mean, of course he did because he was smart. But I just remember thinking like, that's so crazy that you're benching your first round pick. Like,
right.
So let me look up something real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the best moves you've done this year?
Best moves.
Like in the waiver wire pickup, like a trade or a
one comes to mind. I was looking here at my roster. I ended up picking up Hunter Renfro late in the season, and he end up doing pretty well for me there.
Yeah, he had a great, end of
the year.
Finish. Yeah.
Yeah. Him, and also I ended up getting somehow Chase Edmonds from Arizona, running back.
Off the waiver wire?
Maybe not off the waiver wire, unless I think I made a trade with you too. I traded you Darrell Williams, Kansas City's running back, for Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, and then I remember that. Like I was willing to get rid of Darrell Williams because like he was hot at the moment, and I was like, I thought I had a great running back crew. Like I had Montgomery, Gibson. I ended up picking up Cordell Patterson, so I was pretty set running back wise, and I needed a quarterback really bad. Let me talk about that week I haven't. So Tom Brady is his bye week, right? And there's nothing on the waiver wire, because people have started which they never used to do. They always have one quarterback, and then when they need somebody, they grab them off the waiver wire. Now people are holding on to quarterback. Like they draft 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback lead, and then it angers me. So Tua wasn't doing great, but he was doing okay. He was putting up 20. 20 is kind of what you want. And I wanted to try to trade because I wanted to keep my winning streak going because I got off to a bad start. My whole season, like, you know, I had 5 wins,
Mhm.
and I thought I had the perfect team.
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
Mhm.
So I wanted Tua. I traded for Tua, and then Tua gets COVID.
Yeah, I
And then
did
it's
see
like
that.
Sunday, and I think I had to start. I had to start somebody, and he got like 11 points. It
Yeah.
was crazy. Like I couldn't get anybody.
Yeah.
And it was just extremely frustrating. You know, it's like I had another problem in another league where I had who did I have? I had my T.J. Hawkinson was my number 1 tight end. Then I had
Good pick.
Dawson Knox as
Oh,
my
Dawson
second.
Knox. Yeah.
Yeah.
Buffalo.
No. I'm sorry. I had how do you pronounce his last name? Pat Farmuth from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I'm mispronouncing his name. Sorry, I had him, and he had played a Thursday night game,
Yeah.
and I was like, I think TJ Hawkins gonna be able to play, and then he played. He didn't make, you know, he wasn't active on Sunday at the last minute. So I was like, crap, like now I have an empty tight end spot because my backup tight end already played, and my current tight end is out. And the lead setting, and I hate this so much. You could only keep 2 tight ends on the bench. So either I could drop TJ Hawkins and group up some idiot for like hopefully get a couple of touchdowns. Or just play nothing and I called the commissioner about it. I was like, hey, listen, because what's happening is like, yeah, sorry, I can't do anything. The reason why we keep the waiver wire competitive, you didn't prepare for, you know, TJ Hawkins being out. I'm like, I did have a backup. He just played Thursday, and he's like, should have played him. I don't like that rule. Like, cause like I couldn't go out. You could only allowed to have 2 tight ends on the team. You could like you're capped. One of my ESPN leagues. You're capped at 2 quarterback, 2 tight end, 2 defense, 2 kickers, 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers. Which it's good for the wide receivers and running backs because like people. I mean, I do it. I stockpile. Like come the middle of the season, I stockpile my running back because I know everybody's going to get hurt. So
Yeah.
That's frustrating. So what was any other moves, trades that you were quite proud of that kind of worked out for you?
Well, I mean, just that trade, you know, that helped me, I think, win a week or two. Darrell Williams went off. He had a good week that week.
You think
So
Darrell
that
Williams going to
moved.
be good next year?
And then, what's that?
You think Darrell Williams is going to be good next year?
I think he's going to be good. Yeah.
Would you draft him like in the later rounds?
I think he's a value pick. Yeah. Later rounds for sure. I think he'd be a very valuable guy in the later rounds. Yeah, definitely. You know, because Kansas City has a Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a starter, and I think he's a good backup. I think he'd be pretty solid. Well, as a backup, you know, you could have him on the bench in fantasy, and if something happens to Edwards-Helaire, then you know, you've got Williams in your pocket. But you know, but not only if and I'm not, you know, wishing anything Edwards-Helaire, obviously. But even if he's not hurt, he's still a good value, you know, to get some of the other touches in the backfield. So, you know, I think he's pretty good value for sure. The other move that stuck out was that Renfrow pickup late in the season. Somehow happened to see he was on the waiver wire. And I said to myself, well, let me just get him. You know, he's on the waiver wire, you know, couldn't hurt. He's been having a decent year and he did well. You know, he really did for me, at least in the later weeks of the season. I think what's his name when Waller got hurt, Darren Waller, the Raiders tight end, he was out for a little bit. And unfortunately, Henry Ruggs also. He had that horrible DUI crash, you know, unfortunate, horrible incident. And he obviously left the team. And, you know, that obviously opened things up for Renfrow to get more receptions and get the ball more. And, you know, definitely helped his fantasy value, unfortunately, you know, due to that. But also, again, Waller got hurt too. So that's another move that really stuck out for me, you know, at the end of the season.
Would you consider picking up Renfrow next season? Let's pretend that Derek Carr is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, you have to draft him. Like, what round do you draft him in right now?
I think if the carryover to next season happens, obviously Ruggs is not going to be there. Depending on, maybe, I don't know if they're going to go out in free agency and try to get a wide receiver, to complement Renfro. I forget who else is in the receiving core.
Well, they are like Jay Jones was his
Zay Jones.
Yeah, I think he started in Buffalo or something. Don't quote me on that.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just been a personal favorite of Derek Carr for a while. He's got a couple. He had a little bit of a late season surge, but other than that, I mean, he's not like a rookie. He's been around the league for a while. Brandon Edwards. I took Brandon Edwards in a lot of best ball leagues.
Yeah.
I think that he was going to take a step forward finally, but he never really did. Even though it did with the time. I think I remember picking him up like in the mid-season when Waller went down, in a couple of my other leagues, and he didn't do anything. I mean, not really. I ended up dropping him again. So it's like, I'd be very curious to see who gets the head coaching job in Vegas because I think it'd be a cool place to play. And I hope they move on from Carr. I mean, from the game I watched yesterday versus Cincinnati, Carr he's not making quick decisions. He's got the talent. He just does not make good decisions in the pocket, and that was painfully obvious at that game. So always, if you ever see Derek Carr on an NFL team and the weather is below 30, bet against him. He has never won a game where the weather is below 30. So
some people don't do well on the ice. One thing I was going to mention. My wife, Megan, as you know, she was in Las Vegas this last week for a big industry trade show conference, right? And she ended up touring the Vegas Raiders stadium. And
really? Because they were playing at Cincinnati, right?
You're right. Yeah, they were. But they were able to tour it, her and some other professionals. Actually, or interestingly enough, she ended up going, one of her clients, Megan's clients, are the Dallas Cowboys marketing team. And she toured the Raiders facility with some of the members of the Dallas Cowboys marketing team. So it was interesting because they were asking each other, is this stadium, like how big is this stadium? It doesn't seem that big. And, they were just kind of.
What a power flex. Like my stadium's bigger than yours.
Actually, I think they said it held like 60 or 80,000. But Megan was saying to them, she said, is this awkward for you guys working for the Cowboys and being here? She goes, it's awkward for me. So
that's hilarious.
So that was kind of, fun little thing she got to do while she was there for a work conference.
Yeah, I remember here in Texas, they when they opened up, we call it Jerry World around here, but when they opened up AT&T Stadium, they were offering these expensive tours of the stadium.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was so dumb. But then I actually walked around the stadium. I'm like, I don't even mind a tour. See, like, what else is going on up in this place? You can see like the field level, you see the locker room, you see way up high. I mean, it's interesting. I don't make fun of it anymore. So, okay, so let's talk about. Now, I probably would have a little bit more than you because I played in 8 leagues this year that I talked about on the previous episode. But let's talk about your favorite fantasy football players and your worst. And this could be either on your team or playing daily fantasy. So what were your favorite? Like, give me your top 5 favorites that you're gonna heavily target again in next year's draft.
Are these players that were on my current roster, or could these be players that it could be anything?
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to start with probably the number one, and I'm going to start with favorites, I guess. Guys to look at.
Okay.
So don't you take any notes because it uses against me. Okay.
We got a long off season ahead of us, so
I know. Well, I mean, I think too, whenever you're drafting in the league, you want to make sure what format is it? Is it PPR? Is it non-PPR? I think that's one factor you want to consider when considering guys to heavily target. You want to look at guys that are some of the top receivers or running backs that get a lot of catches in the backfield and are able to make plays that way too. So you don't have to look at only wide receivers or running backs. I mean, you could even, so I think that's one thing to consider when first off, when you're targeting, top guys, quote unquote. I think for me, guys that I would look at, top producing players this year, you look at guys like running back, Jonathan Taylor, I think obviously comes to mind when it comes to top producing running backs, in all, I think really, maybe not in PPR formats, but the guy just ran the ball so well this year behind that Colts offensive line. He's one guy definitely to consider. Another guy.
If you had the first round pick for next year, would you take? Is it a hard choice between? Because there's people a lot of the fantasy community talk about. Should you take Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor? And I don't know yet.
That's a good problem to have, I think, comparing those two guys. That's a good problem, because in next year, actually, I do have the number one pick. So I in our league, by the way. So, yeah, I mean, that's a valid point, right? And you brought up Derrick Henry as well. That's another good guy, to target. I had him in the Austin League, which is now that weekly, daily fantasy format I mentioned. I had him in that league. And I got him at a great value. I got him in the, I think maybe 4th or 5th round. And he just ended up having a great year that year. Anyway, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, wide receivers, maybe like Cooper Kupp, just great year this year.
I got Cooper Kupp everywhere in the 4th round. Probably. And like the one league that I won, I got Cooper Kupp with, Matthew Stafford, and Cooper Kupp covered Matthew Stafford's mistakes for most of the year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he won't go in the 4th round next year. I promise you that.
No, he won't. He will not. But man, he just turned out to be great this year. So those would be maybe, those are 3 guys that I consider, top guys to target for next year, obviously. So with the number one pick this year, definitely considering all 3 of those guys. Depending on, hopefully, none of those guys get hurt. You never want players to get hurt because, they want to perform, they want to do well, and they have to make money for themselves and their families. So never like to see guys get hurt, regardless if they're on, opposing team of, my favorite teams, Cowboys and Broncos. Never want to see opposing guys get hurt. So I think the, top 3 guys would be those guys I'd be looking at.
All right. So quick side question about the Broncos, since you're a Broncos fan. Who is your dream quarterback for next year to come?
I think everybody knows who they want to come to Denver. That would be Mr. Discount Double Check. Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I think that would be the best fit for the culture there too, and it comes with, I don't know what they're gonna do with Melvin Gordon, but it comes with Jamal Williams, who's I'm watching him during the offseason to kind of see what the reports are. The loaded wide receiver core, they just had a bad year. I mean, even but like I remember winning some games with Tim Patrick. Because he seems to have a monster game. I happen to have him in daily fantasy. So, Tim Patrick, Courtney Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant hopefully takes a step forward, but I feel like that's just not his fault.
Yeah.
Who else is there? That's pretty much it, right?
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
That's a great, solid offense. That you can.
It is.
With the right quarterback, they could easily make the playoff next year.
Yeah. So, they got a good defense and.
Yeah, dude. I used the defense in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The league that I won. So,
yeah.
No, after you New England, but anyway. So, biggest bombs from either the draft or people, or like, they did okay in the beginning of the season, and you ended up like just hating them, and it's like you will not touch again. I'll give you a great example of mine. I took Trey Sermon everywhere.
You did?
Yeah, and like Elijah Mitchell went undrafted. And I mean, I blew like 6th round, 5th round picks on him, trying to make sure that I was like, oh, this guy is going to be. When he Moses, like, I love that guy. I knew he was going to get. I didn't think he would get hooked that fast, but like I thought, like, it'd be Raheem Moses for 3 to 4 games, and then it'd be Trey Sermon. And when Raheem Moses went down, I was like, Trey Sermon's going to be it. And who the fuck is Elijah Mitchell? So, so who's that guy for you?
Man, I think one guy that was like the biggest, and this is like bomb, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said biggest bomb. Man, I can't. This is kind of tough because while I know, or I mentioned earlier, Saquon, to me didn't perform to his draft value.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of the season, being hurt, just not performing well, even when he was healthy, just not performing up to first round standards.
Right.
I mean, I would have to say, I don't even know if this counts. Maybe I drafted Will Fuller around the middle rounds. The guy didn't play a single down this year. He was on IR the whole year. And I expected him to perform at least a little bit.
Yeah. That's
so
I'd
have to say that would probably be like a waste, like a bomb, I guess, because I had him last year, maybe the year before. He actually did very well when he was with Houston. I would put him in the flex spot at times, and
he's
performed very well. Guy. Yeah. So I would probably have to say him as my answer.
Yeah, Will Fuller. Man, I don't know what, like, that's actually a really good name. Even if he is healthy, I may actually avoid him next year.
Yeah.
Just because it's not worth, chasing after,
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, he hadn't played in a full season. Now, granted, he may be healthy again, but I don't think he's worth the risk. I don't think he's worth the risk.
How old is he? He's getting up there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's worth the risk this coming season to place even middle rounds. I just don't think he is.
Yeah, to leave him on the waiver wire for like maybe a weekly pickup or something.
Yeah, maybe see how he does in his first few weeks, and then I may have to be battling you for him. I don't know.
All right. So before we wrap up, I want to ask one final question, and I think it's something that I like to do every year with. Like, what did I do bad this year that I could do differently next year? Like, for example, like at the beginning of this year, and I talked about it in one of my videos, is one of the things I did was, and I do this every year regardless, but one of the things I did is I hold on to players too long. Just need to free up and pick up somebody else differently that's actually producing. And I need to do it before week 8. Because after week 8, or actually, more like week 7, it becomes a barren wasteland of waiver wire pickup. Because everybody gets solidified, everybody knows who's producing, they pick up the backup. So try to be a little bit more on top of that, especially during week 5 to 6. Then I was much, much better about that this year. So, so tell me, so talk about some of the things you wish you had been more mindful of and you want to improve on for the 22 season.
Well, one thing immediately comes to mind. It was a matchup against our friend Anthony. I remember the day of, I started somebody who was healthy, and I didn't pay attention that day to the injury report that came out in the morning. And turns out, I thought the player was healthy, he didn't play at all. He registered me 0 points, and Anthony beat me by like a point. So even if this guy had played, and
if
Anthony,
you just played one catch, you would have been fine.
This was I forgot who it was now. It was
the
latter part of the season, but I try to be mindful of myself, or mindful, of staying up on the injury reports and the COVID. Now you have to look at the COVID list, well, I know that they report them both now at the same time, but say who's out because of injury or out because of COVID protocols. So I would say biggest thing for me that I need to be more mindful of that actually cost me a win this year, which may have been the difference between, maybe qualifying for the playoffs, maybe not. I need to go back and look at the records because I was right on the bubble of making the playoffs. So I would say that biggest thing for next year to be mindful of is absolutely double, maybe triple check to make sure that before the games kick off at noon, that every single player is eligible to play and not on the IR list or COVID list. So that would be the number one thing for me that immediately comes to mind as far as like things to do next year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I first started playing, I would set my lineup after waivers ran, and I wouldn't check it again until next week. Yeah. Like, it was just like one and done. Like, and then it started like, all right, I would set my lineup on Wednesday. I would kind of fiddle around with it and double check on Friday, and I'll be done. I could just watch the game. Now I've got a vote coming up. Like, if it's somebody that I follow, I'm like, hey, what's going on? And it's kind of like become, obsessive. Well, I'm in 8 leagues now, and I do a fantasy football podcast. So it's like, I'm checking, at 11 a.m., Sunday morning. No matter how much I've had to drink, I'm checking them on Sunday night. For I'm checking them on
Monday afternoon.
Monday afternoon. I'm checking them like on Saturday night.
Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
The Thursday night game.
Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. So I've got like a whole system set up now where I'm constantly making sure, because like a good friend actually pointed out to me was like, of all the time and money you invest in this, to like not give yourself every opportunity to win, because a lot of these leagues that we're in, like the payouts are, a couple $100, like, that's spent on vacation for something, and that's just the mindset that I have. It's like, all right, listen, you invest in this, make sure you participate in it. And like most of the leagues I play in, like you said, like, with our leagues, like everybody like has gotten better at understanding fantasy football, researching fantasy football. They don't just buy a magazine right before the draft and just do a ranking list. Because just because you have like a top 200 ranking list does not mean you should draft in that order at all. So, I remember in several drafts this year, I got sniped. By sniped, I mean they drafted a person right before me that I was hoping for, like more times than I've ever seen in my life, which means they're getting better information than I'm getting, or the same better information that I'm getting now. So it's kind of like it's become more competitive, and I hate it and I love it. So we don't have that. I don't have that many leagues that have that. I mean, every league has that one guy that kind of checks out after week 6, and that's unfortunate. But it's hard to get 12 guys to be consistent. So yeah. Well, that's all I have for you today, Jared. Like, thank you so much for coming on in the Fantasy Tippler. We would love to have you back at some point, and have a great off season, and we look forward to 22.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right,
you guys have a good day.
Follow the show on all streaming platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Fantasy Tippler and Twitter at Fantasy Tippler.